Okay, welcome to the CryptoBlockCon interview series. My name is Wyatt Hoover. I'm the Executive Director for CryptoBlockCon. I'm here today with Justas Pikelis, co-founder of Monetha and a Forbes 30 Under 30 designee. I'm talking to you today from Florida's Space Coast, my hometown of Melbourne Beach. Justas, where are you at?
I'm right now in Vilnius, Lithuania, which is a Baltic state in European Union in Europe, kind of Northern Europe region. This is where our software development office is.
Excellent. It's always fun to hear about with the decentralized nature of blockchain and having conversations all the time, all across the world. So glad to have you with us. We're talking today in advance of our CryptoBlockCon London, which is coming up next week, September 24th and 25th. And we're actually having a session with you that's going to focus on anatomy of the ICO. And we're going to be talking about how you guys managed to raise somewhere around $37 million in 18 minutes. So I'm sure that was pretty exciting. We look forward to hearing a little bit about that. But first, want to do a little bit of background with you and just give us some background on Monetha itself.
Yeah, so Monetha was started at the very early days of 2017. Me and two of my co-founders, Laurinas, who's more responsible for the product, and Andre, who's more responsible for the technical implementation, we have met together and we wanted to do something with payments. We saw that there is an opportunity there. And at that time, we understood that blockchain should be the way if we want to implement payments and do them faster and do them more efficiently. We should implement blockchain technology. So when you think about implementation of the blockchain technology inside your product, you essentially kind of think about doing an ICO. Even though in the very early days of 2017. It wasn't as prominent and as popular as it is today or it was a year ago. So it kind of skyrocketed. It was very interesting because not a lot of people knew what ICO is. So you would speak to lawyers, you would speak to marketeers, and they would not know what an ICO is. All they knew at that time was Bitcoin, and their kind of presumption of that was Bitcoin is darknet's money. So this is why we traveled and incorporated in Switzerland, in Zug, the crypto valley as they call it. And it's a really cool city in terms of that those lawyers and those marketeers, you don't have to educate them. They kind of, in some regards, educate you. So this really was a big push for us and kind of locked in the idea of doing funding round through an ICO, even though we had connections with VCs and thought about going the traditional route, but understood that our product is consumer-faced, and if we want to have this kind of quick adoption with the blockchain technology, ICO really makes sense. So essentially, what our product is a trust and reputation, and that came about because we understood that we need that competitive edge, something of a differentiator when it comes to payments. And when you look at blockchain, one of the things that you kind of see straight away is that payments is one of the main pillars of crypto, of blockchain, and trust and reputation is another one. So we wanted to combine those two to have that kind of competitive advantage over the other payment gateways. And this is where we incorporated trust and reputation. We saw that it stuck like crazy. People were really interested about that. Professionals really kind of were excited about the technology. And we really shifted more into trust and reputation. And this is how our products are being made. So we have right now two products, which is cryptocurrency payment processor, which you install in your e-commerce store, and together with that, after the transaction, you get a trust and reputation rating. Another one is an application which you can download on iOS and Android devices, which is essentially deal-making application, which again, your reputation is being stored on blockchain.
Just that, huh? Okay, great. Thanks for that. Thanks for the background. It's always nice to hear. There's so many blockchain groups that are still white paper stage. So it's nice to be talking to a group that is up and running and actually producing something tangible that people can use. So next question is a little more on the personal side. I hear a lot of, it's always interesting. I hear a bunch of random stories about how people found out about crypto or blockchain and eventually got into it. What led you into the space, and how did you initially learn about the technology?
Well, my story is as random as it gets. But I do know very specifically when did I found out about the blockchain technology and when I was like really interested in it. It was the 28th of January of 2014. This is where right now he's a world famous podcaster, but before that he wasn't as known. His name is Joe Rogan, and he had on his podcast none other than Andreas Antonopoulos, which in my opinion, he's of course a Bitcoin purist, but or Bitcoin maximalist, but he really knows how to communicate and how with clarity tell why blockchain is needed. So all these keywords of like be your own bank, peer-to-peer, decentralized networks. This was really interesting for me as kind of having this, libertarian views, and this was kind of really communicated through Andreas. So he was on that show, and the next day I thought like, wow, I need to know more about this technology. I would say about 3-4 months after that, I bought some Bitcoin, and then I was in. So I was always into, startups, into technology, but this has really been, a thing that interested me. And I said that I'll be waiting for that opportunity when my business can incorporate blockchain technology. So it was quite random encounter, the first encounter with the blockchain technology. And it took me, almost 3 years to really start like developing and being into it with my own hands. But yeah, this was quite random and serendipity kind of moment.
Excellent, thanks. I think that the 3 years timetable is really interesting, and there's a number of folks in this space who are trying to get in and make their money right away. And I think that the industry could use a small dose of patience in terms of the development and where we're going as a whole. So I think these conversations are going to continue, but that was a great story. So next up, just talking about the anatomy of an ICO session. And so for CryptoBlockCon, we host this type of session where we do an anatomy of something, where we kind of break down the individual parts. And so I talked to you previously about kind of looking at the lead up, the day of the ICO, which I'm sure was insanely exciting for you guys, and then what happened in the weeks or months after. What can we expect to hear from you next week in London on that session?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the ICO in stages, what needs to be done and what has been done in our opinion, and in our case. Before the crowd sale moment, the preparation when it comes to the legal, the preparation when it comes to the marketing, the preparation when it comes to the product. Then I'll talk a little bit about, the exact moment, the exact date, the D-Day of the ICO, which doesn't happen that much right now. But it did happen a lot like a year ago when you had those kind of fast crowd sales. And why did we set up our max cap at $37 million, and how it happened in 18 minutes. How we protected our ICO with the security kind of things. And I'll talk about the thing that a lot of people kind of oversee, ignore. And this wasn't ignored by us. And this is kind of the post-ICO behavior. What do you need to do to really, be able to cash out the money in fiat? How do you need to, continue with the development? And these are kind of all this kind of before the ICO, during the crowd sale, and post ICO really correlates between each other. And finally, I would like to talk on the 25th about the current stage of the ICO. So we really keep the pulse of the ICOs, because this industry is really interesting to us. We have been a part of it, quite a big part of it. So what we know right now is how this kind of evolutionized to what is being done today, how ICOs are raising money nowadays, and how that kind of differs from what has happened a year ago. Because our ICO has happened a year ago, and that's actually kind of in crypto years, that's like light years ago. But we know we have the knowledge of what's happening right now. And I would be glad to kind of share the tips and also share the mistakes that we have made. So others who are thinking about doing an ICO or maybe even STO would not repeat them.
Excellent. And so one question I have to ask, and it's not terribly relevant to the ICO discussion and your strategy necessarily, but give us a glimpse of, at what point did you realize this thing was going to go quickly? Was it like 30 seconds in, a minute in? Did you guys have like a command center set up? Like,
we really tracked, the community kind of metrics and how much people are excited about our ICO. So we kind of understood that we're a big deal like 3 weeks before the ICO. Of course, when I talked to the team right before the crowd sale, I said, let's be prepared not to sleep for several days. This is going to be really hard for us. It might take 3 days, 4 days. We'll see. But when the first kind of the first kind of minutes came in, we saw that I think there were like 7 or 8 million straight away, just like was received. And we were, we said like, wow, this is going to be, this is going to be interesting. And this is funny because one of the kind of security precautions that we have done is we did a Facebook live stream. So we said, if we're going to get hacked or if something happens, if the address is going to be changed, crowd sale address, or somebody's going to phish our website, we're going to say it live, right? Because that's kind of a security mechanism. So all those 18 minutes, you can see that like the metamorphosis of my face, the colors of my face being changing in those 18 minutes. So everything of that is being recorded, but the kind of the background and what has happened behind the scenes, I'm going to share that with the audience in London.
Okay, awesome, thanks. And then, I don't want to be a spoiler, but is there anything sort of unexpected that happened that day or kind of through the process that you can kind of give us a preview, or something that you might change if you had to do the whole process over again? I don't expect too terribly much given the outcome.
Yeah, it's interesting. Of course, we had 3 times as much transactions coming in. So, sorry, we had to decline around, I think somewhere around 80 million worth of Ether, because our max cap was reached. So we didn't probably anticipate the right amount, kind of, the max cap before the ICO. We understood that we're big, but we didn't understand that we're that big. So we could have raised, 3 times as much. But I'm not losing sleep over that, because that's more than enough for us to really develop the product, and then we have extra capital to really business develop this and make it a global product. So I would implement a few metrics that would help us follow better the temperature in the market, but other than that, there were not like big mistakes. Of course, we had a few smaller mistakes, like probably setting like a limit cap on the personal investment. But again, I'm going to share this kind of in depth because that's more of a technical thing on Monday.
Okay, excellent. So let's step a little bit big picture.
Sorry, Tuesday, right? Sorry,
Tuesday. We'll be having drinks on Monday. Do the conference on Tuesday. So I know you're excited about Monetha, but aside from your group, what excites you the most right now about where blockchain is and sort of the future of the technology, whether it's an application or financial products or the markets or what have you?
Yeah, there are different decentralized applications, and some of them need to be decentralized. Some of them don't need to be decentralized. That could be discussed by Ethereum purists or decentralization blockchain purists and things like that. But I would go with this a little bit in a different route, and I would say that watch the markets where there's blood on the streets. And this sometimes not literally, but watch the markets where there's economic downturn, like where markets are hitting the bottom. Like we're talking about Turkey, we're talking about Argentina. These kind of countries or markets where the society, the community is losing the trust of the government. This is where it will be interesting. This is where maybe blockchain, but also the concept, the futures of crypto are going to be very, very included, and people are going to start to use it. So I'm excited about how blockchain can help those markets. I'm also excited about different disruption models in kind of in different industries, whether we're talking about payments, whether we're talking about trust and reputation, or medtech, edtech. This is going to be very, very interesting. So the kind of seeing which ones are going to survive, which projects are going to survive, and which ones are going to thrive, or which ones are going to be dead after this bubble. And then let's be honest, in some ways, the decentralized application model, it is a bubble. So this is really interesting. I would say these two factors, are the ones that are I'm looking forward to the most.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, so last question, just for fun. You guys timed the market just right with your ICO, and we've had some sad faces out there for the past couple of months in the crypto market. So do you care to speculate a little bit about the return of the digital currency markets, and kind of when we might see some of those smiles return to our investors' faces?
First of all, I think that, when we're talking about ICO, so if you structure it correctly and do all the things correctly, and, really take a look at the hardcore business logic that has worked for, hundreds of years, you can still raise a significant amount of money through an ICO. That's still possible. Of course, it's not as easy, I would say, as it was a year ago, but it's still possible. But when it comes to the kind of the general market comeback, I'll share you a story actually, which has happened yesterday. So one of my friends, he's a high net worth individual, but he's like also into crypto. He wrote me a message. He said, "Man, what do you think? Is the winter is going to be the comeback season?" And I said, like, 100%, man, 100%. Winter is going to be when crypto is coming back. And he said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying to all my friends, all my colleagues." And I replied, "Yes, but I do not know whether the winter is going to be 2018 or 2025. So, I would not dare to speculate when it's going to come back in the short term, but I'm a true believer when it comes to long term. And the long term is like, we're talking about actually long term, not crypto long term. So it could happen it could take 7 years, it could take 10 years. But I think you and the community that you have built with your conference, and I've been, to one in New York and spoke there. It's people are truly, I would say, they're not tourists, as we call them. They're not the ones who are coming in and coming out whenever buy high and sell low. They're actually into the technology. They understand why it's needed, and I don't think that they really care that much about the short-term prices. But it's going to be interesting to kind of also to discuss this in London.
Excellent, thanks. Yeah, we do really love having non-tourists, as you stated. It's a funny way to describe it, at the programs, and have people who are talking about the real applications and the technology, and who are kind of in the industry to stay and see the real exciting long-term possibilities that the technology can deliver to various markets in different parts of the world. So that'll be good. And that's all the questions I have for you today. We have, again, just as a reminder for everyone, we'll be next week in London for CryptoBlockCon the 24th and 25th of September. You can register on CryptoBlockCon.com and come join us and see Justas give you all the details about the ICO and what they did and how they were successful and what he might change. So Justas, thanks so much for taking the time today, and I'll see you next week in London.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to it. See you in London.